Stace, Bob, anything else y'all want to say? Did I just call you Bob? I said Stace, and then I shortened Bob. I don't call you Bob. You're welcome.
Welcome to What We Really Want, conversations about connection. Settle in and get ready for a great conversation. Let's talk about what we really want.
Hard to believe it's been a year.
Yeah.
Here we
Today?
No.
Well,
I mean, the day that it's going up.
That it's going to air, yes.
What are we doing? Throw this all out. It hasn't been
It's actually been 1 year, almost to the day. I think that what you're listening to right now, at least as I'm recording it, is the idea of a bonus episode. So, if that's what this is, then congratulations, my idea worked. But I wanted just to, Stacey and Bobby and I just recorded the little preamble or the opener for the John Eldridge episode, which was episode 35. But we're still talking because it's been a year that we've had What We Really Want going, and we've done 35 episodes, plus a little extra helping around the holidays, so really 36. And this is another little extra helping for y'all, just as we look back and we celebrate a year of putting this out into the world. And I'm really grateful for some of the connections that I've gotten to make. I mean, most obviously because of the people that I've gotten to talk to. But then I don't know about y'all, but well, I do know because you tell me, but I'd love to give you a chance to talk about some of the things that you hear from people in our community, from friends, as they're hearing these conversations and the way that it's affecting them, because I think it's really been special and helped give people the kind of things to think about that we were hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, I love listening to the podcast myself, and that, like, the men who come to our meetings, I constantly hear people say, like, oh, well, this podcast is very meaningful to them, and that they're like tearing it up. And I think the most impactful thing that was said to me personally was how the episode where I tell my story changed this guy's life. Like he said that was the starting point for me, and that blew me away.
That's
I was
amazing.
like, wow.
Just the very fact that you are open about your story is, a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
They're not there.
Well, you were saying something before we came in here and started recording out there in the
I was wondering
hall
if you want to say that.
about just the wow, like kind of this is my life now because of something that John said about things that we would think are disqualifiers, but really are qualifiers for union with God. Tell us what you were saying.
Absolutely. I mean, I was talking to a friend the other day, and it just hit me how amazing it is in God's, providence and this his plan of working things out, and just his grace that I am now like full-time helping people work through sex addiction, which like that's my job, where 10 years ago that was the thing that I thought had completely ruined me, and that that to be able to do any type of ministry or anything that I ever thought I wanted to do or that God had called me to do, it was now ruined. And now I'm going to do this full time.
Yeah.
And you get paid for it. Like, that's like, to me, that just blows my mind. Like,
wait, I'm paying you?
Yeah. Like, how in the world, like, what kind of God does that?
Yeah.
What kind of God takes what is like the absolute worst thing to me that I've ever done, or the worst things about me, and is now that's the very thing that I'm doing.
Well, an ironic one.
I mean, yeah.
Right?
Like,
I mean,
yeah.
what kind of God? One who really appreciates good irony.
Yeah.
But that's nothing new, right? I mean, we have the same story. I mean, hun, you not so much, because where we are is like not quite as obviously because of something bad that you did,
Right.
like it is with me.
I'm
But
like, well, I have a little bit of different spin
But when you
on
think
that.
about weaknesses and becoming strength, and you look at David, you look at Paul, you look at, all of these broken, flawed people, and the specificity of the areas in which they were flawed and broken, being an empowering thing, and being the way that other people who connect and relate to that, can find hope.
An ironic God, a God of redemption, though. It's like he takes the very things that we thought was the end of us and recreates it, and makes it beautiful.
And you think, Bobby, about the guy who came and said that listening to your story changed his life. I mean, that's a pretty superlative thing to. I mean, that's a big statement.
Yeah.
Changed my life, and I mean, we're assuming he meant for the good. But the fact that something like a simple audio podcast put on by people who really don't know what they're doing. I mean, figuring this out as we go along. It is so simple. Like the hook, the format, not complicated. It's just usually 2 or 3 people just talking.
Yeah.
But it's talking about real things. It's genuine connection. We're meeting about things that matter. Mm-hmm. And in listening into that, people who have not been invited to that or who have not felt like it was safe to do that, maybe haven't been sure if they have people in their lives with whom they can do that, get a picture of what it would be like, right? And if you're new to the show and you haven't listened to all the old episodes, I'm going to tell you something that we talked about early on, and that is, how did this show get to be called What We Really Want? And there's really 2 reasons. One was because it's a reference to a story that Michael John Cusick, who's been a guest, shared in his book, Surfing for God, about when he was confessing some things to his mentor, Larry Crabb, that he was struggling with sexually. And Larry said, well, Mike, if that's what you really want, then I think you should do it. And it was basically looping him in to helping him realize that what he was doing was not what he really wanted. He was trying to care for himself, but it was in a way that wasn't meeting the need. But the other place was the TED Talk that Johann Hari did, and it was probably by now 15 years ago, called Everything You Know About Addiction is Wrong. And I just want to read an excerpt from it. He says it probably about the 2/3 mark of his TED Talk. I've been talking about how disconnection is a major driver of addiction, and weird to say that it's growing because you'd think we're the most connected society that's ever been, surely. But I increasingly began to think that the connections we have or think we have are like a kind of parody of human connection. If you have a crisis in your life, you'll notice something. It won't be your Twitter followers, now X. It won't be your Twitter followers who come to sit with you. It won't be your Facebook friends who help you turn it around. It'll be your flesh and blood friends who you have deep and nuanced and textured face-to-face relationships with. And that really struck me from the very first time I heard it. A lot of us feel like we're super connected because of our followers, because of our social connections. But then when life falls apart, like that is hollow, it's empty. And so to have these conversations about connection, which is the subtitle of the show, in doing that, we get to experience what we really want, which is deep, meaningful, real relational connection with people. Mm-hmm. And it's sad how few of us feel like we get that enough, right? I mean, who complains about just being too rich in meaningful, intimate friendships and connections with other people?
I got too many friends and too many good conversations.
Too many.
It's like Dwight said on The Office, we need a new plague.
Well, I was thinking about you, Greg, when you said that I don't know how you said it. I may not say the same thing as you and Bobby are saying, like doing this out of...
What got you into this is different, yeah.
You got me into this. Right.
You're welcome.
But I will say this many years later, it wasn't something like my addiction that got me here, but I also was living just a way that wasn't connected, or I thought it was. I thought, I had sincere, real relationships, but I also wasn't showing up, authentically. But I was listening to The Fix. And
which is Ian Morgan Cron's newest book on the 12 steps.
There you go. And he was talking about owning your part in, like, I guess the trauma or all of the things, not just the trauma, but owning your part. And that's something that just has hit me like, no, I didn't do this, but I have plenty that I have, had to own. And it wasn't until my life blew up that I was at a place of being open to look at all of that, I guess. And so in that way, I'm not glad you did what you did. Yeah. I'm never going to say thank you for that. But thank you, I guess, that we're here, and God has worked amazing ways. And then I am very sensitive and aware of, dear friends who don't have the redemption story with their marriage. but God is restoring their soul and healing them. It's just not the way they had hoped.
Right.
And so it's sad, but it's beautiful. It's I don't know what you call that.
It's holding space for two things that at the surface might seem mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sadness and joy, or, wishing things would have been different, but grateful because it had to be this way. And the Lord brought you to where you are. And it's
hard.
The both and.
I was talking to somebody recently. It is not easy to say yes to staying. You've done your work and I'm grateful for it, but it's not been easy. It is hard to stay and to keep doing the work. So that sounds kind of depressing and sad, but it's real. It's just, and I need, speaking of the community and the people that show up, I need the community. We're doing well, but I need the community.
And also,
my community, and also,
it doesn't feel like what you just described every day.
No, that is so true. That's so true.
That's the important part too about progress is as we're making progress, we can zoom out and see how much has been made. But when we zoom in on an individual day that might feel bad, it's easy to forget.
And that's why the community is good, because they speak truth and they remind me of where we've come.
Well, what you're talking about right now reminds me, and Bobby, weigh in on this too, going all the way back to episode 4 with Phil Herndon, talking about feelings, because, we got to know Phil having done the Voice of the Heart Bible study workbook with some guys in our community, and just getting a really interesting, broader perspective on our feelings, our emotions than we had before. The 8 that are outlined in that study, which source from Chip Dodd's book, The Voice of the Heart, 7 of those at first glance seem quote unquote negative, right? Or what we would have called negative emotions, but we got to know them quite differently through going through that, and then hearing Phil talk about it.
Yeah. To Stacey's point, and your point about it's not every day like this, and we need the community. I mean, there's so many times where I'm feeling these feelings, and where before I used to numb myself with porn or other things, and now I'm feeling them, and that's hard. And I need people. I need my community to be able to help me work through these, and to be able to, like you said, we think they're negative, like sadness, and that's really hard. But it's not negative. I need to feel sadness. I need to be able to sit with that. And the more I do, the more I'm able to build up my, I don't know if tolerance is the right word, but my
resilience,
resilience to be able to sit in it and experience it, and
and not only to see it as something that is to be endured, but as something that's maybe even to be welcomed and blessed. Because one of the things that I remember from the Bible study workbook that we did was the example of sadness was Jesus at the tomb of Lazarus, and grieving his guts out, to use a term that Phil used in the episode. But grief, sadness is something that we feel because something that I love has changed or gone away. And if something that I love and deeply care about has gone away or has changed and I don't have that anymore, what is wrong internally if I'm not feeling grief and sadness?
Yeah.
Right. And so, but I mean, I think probably so many of us grew up in environments where sadness makes the people around us feel uncomfortable. So don't cry. It's okay. Don't cry. Like, yes, cry. This is a situation in which crying makes sense. It's appropriate. But wow, just to be able to have a chance to take another look at that and say, why do I struggle so much with some of these difficult emotions?
Yeah.
That was really powerful.
Yeah. And now we have 2 movies about it, Inside Out and Inside Out 2.
Right?
Yeah. For a new generation.
Exactly.
Well, and just
I wish I'd had that movie when I was a kid.
knowing that they're telling you something. I think a lot of times, I know the women that I talk to, we kind of get sarcastic a little bit about this idea of, oh, I know they're not negative, because, you know, you sit in this long enough and you just get kind of snarky sometimes, but it's just so true. Like, but it's telling me something. So rather than just be sad or just be mad, like what's going on? And that's a pain, because it's better to just carry on by. But if you listen to what's going on,
certainly easier in the short term.
Easier,
to just hurry
yes,
on by.
yes. But I don't know. That was just it's still a big, like, oh my gosh, this is actually good. I'm sad. Okay, let me think about what's going on. Because sometimes I'm sad and I don't know why. Nothing specific happened. But if I like backtrace, I'll realize it might be something little. Something somebody said to me, or I don't know, something that didn't happen that I hoped would happen. And then I'm like, oh, that's what it is. And almost even in acknowledging it, it doesn't go away, but it lessens. Or if I tell somebody.
Yeah. And kind of like what we're talking about with John Eldridge, the idea of like we want to find information so fast and we're not able to just sit with that wonder. Like we want to get rid of our sadness so fast and we're not able to sit with it, or we want to get rid of our anger so fast. And, you know, something that Adam Young, we'll shout out to him and his podcast, The Place We Find Ourselves. I remember him talking about in the Psalms when, you know, David or whoever it is writing, and the Psalms of lament, when he's crying out and he's like, God, how long? And I mean, there's times when I'm like, how long do I have to sit with this sadness? I don't want to sit with this anymore. I get tired of it. And what Adam was inviting me to see and to think about was, we have no idea how long the people that were writing these Psalms were sitting with that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we read the Psalm and we're done in
38 seconds.
Yeah, 38 seconds. And in the end, it's all, you know, it seems like it's been wrapped in a bow and it's all pretty. And, oh, now he's, you know, trusting God and everything is fine. But, you know, this Psalm was probably written over years and we have no idea like how long he really wrestled with it. And, yeah.
That's a great perspective. Like what it's making me think about right now, which won't be shocking to anybody who knows me, is actually something from a movie. But it's from Avengers Endgame, because like at the end of Avengers Infinity War and Thanos snapped his finger and half the people disappeared. And then at the beginning of Endgame, they, you know, catch him, but he's destroyed the stones, so they can't bring everybody back. And then that scene fades out and the screen is black for a few seconds, and then really, really slowly, one word at a time, you see 5 years later, and then it comes back in. Well, that whole thing takes about 20 seconds, but the way that they did it is like, oh, okay, think about what it would be like to sit in this for 5 years. And, you know, in a very short amount of time, they did what they could to give a picture of theirs time that's passed. Well, to your point, a lot of the structure of the Psalms, and then Adam very helpfully helps people see that, is there's the address, then there's the statement of complaint, but then there's the coming back to, you know, the truth that you're hanging on to. But in between the statement of complaint, you know, the lament and the reassurance of what I believe, like that could be years of wrestling with that. And even saying, and yet I know that you're good, that doesn't mean it's tied up with a bow. It's holding space for the both ends. Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is a common thing that we talk about, but you know, the Israelites stood they hung out in the desert for 40 years, and we'll say that and reference things and kind of pass over it, but 40 years.
Yeah.
That is a long
from 1985
time.
Until now.
Yeah.
And I thought 3 to 5 to get out of the trauma was ridiculous. I cussed at my therapist when she told me 3 to 5 years.
We come up with problems. We want it done like next day. We got to fix this, you know. And, we don't know how to sit and wait.
Yeah.
1985, when you put it like that.
Wow. Right. Back when I was 15.
Whew.
Well, I tell you, this has been incredibly fulfilling. It's been joyful to get to meet new people, to reconnect with old people. I mean, old friends, some old people, but I'm just thinking about the people who have been guests on the show who are, it's kind of like a who's who of like cool people that I'd love to meet and have had the opportunity to do so, and to really look at so many different aspects of connection. Don't forget, guys, that's what this show is about. It's not about just talking about interesting things. It's about talking about what real healthy connection looks like, with really in 3 directions: connecting with God, connecting with ourselves, connecting with other people. And then even drilling in a little bit more, just as a reminder, some of the conversations we've had, well, they've all kind of zoomed in on particular aspects or experiences with connection, like authenticity, community, interdependence, depending on other people to get our needs met, vulnerability, empathy, encouragement, protecting others, humility, confession, trust, surrender. There's so many different experiences that most of them are difficult. Most of them, if not all of them, require risk and vulnerability. But when we put ourselves out there and when we let ourselves be truly known, we find that we're not the only ones that want that, right? I mean, that's the thing. People have told me that they feel like when they're listening in, like, yes, like that's what I've thought. I've wanted that. So it's really encouraging, and it's affirming just to hear people let us know that, yeah, it's scratching an itch, and we just pray that we'll continue getting to do that.
Yeah. I was thinking, I remember back in the early days of everything with us, I would share with people in small, I didn't do the whole story, but it felt freeing to be able to say it out loud. I just remember a lot of people just shocked that I would tell anybody any of it. Mm-hmm. And they're believers. And that just makes me sad, because it's not easy to talk about, but the sadness that we would be honest about our story as believers, it just makes me so sad.
We'll be right back.
How have things gotten so out of control? How did something that didn't seem like such a big deal at first completely take over? Porn and sex addiction are destroying your life and killing your relationships. You know you can't keep going on like this, keeping secrets and telling lies. Something has to change. But how? Most men who struggle with unwanted or addictive sexual behavior have tried to fix it on their own. But sex addiction is powerful and complicated. Recovery is possible, but it isn't easy. It requires us to focus on more than just behavior. It requires us to look at our whole lives and the parts of our stories that contribute to addiction. If you're ready to find freedom, maybe it's time for you to get to the roots. The Roots Retreat is a 4-day therapeutic and spiritual intensive. You'll work with therapists and coaches who specialize in sex addiction and recovery. You'll learn how to take healthy ownership of your behavior. You'll discover how your life experiences set the stage for addiction to develop. You'll see how God factors into your struggle, and you'll learn effective tools for ongoing recovery after the retreat. If you're ready to stop trying what doesn't work, if you're ready to experience real hope, healing, and change, let's get to the roots.
Visit awakenrecovery.com/Roots Retreat or click the Roots Retreat link in show notes. It makes me sad too, and at the same time, I get it.
I get it. Because I didn't share anything real deep either before this happened.
Right.
So in that sense, yeah.
And vulnerability, if you go back to something that Drew Boa said in episode 10 about the difference between transparency and vulnerability. I mean, transparency is basically just telling the truth about something. Mm-hmm. Vulnerability is telling the truth about something that could cost me.
That's
right?
True.
And he's like, the difference between standing at the zoo on one side of 4-inch thick protective glass looking at the lion pad versus being on the other side of the glass in the pad with the lions.
Yeah.
Like, transparency is looking through the glass from safety. Vulnerability is being in there where the lion could tear you apart.
It's true.
And I thought that was a really powerful distinction. And when we have not been used to situations involving vulnerability, of course our minds are going to go to everything that could go wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I could get ripped to shreds because we haven't had the experience of that could happen, but then it didn't, right? Something better happened. Like I actually got to connect and I got to be known and I got to feel what it's like to put all my stuff out there with this person that I chose to trust and to have them steward it well.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
And when it doesn't
what a
happen,
gift.
because that, there was a lot of loss in our early days of just loss of friendships, and God gave new people. So it's like, even if you do put it out there and you get ripped to shreds, it's still not the end, because God will give you new people. And He gave me new people, and I didn't want the new people. Sorry, new people, but I didn't, because I didn't know them. But now some of those new people, I've talked about them before. They're my besties, and I hit the lottery, hit the jackpot, whatever. And we're still having margaritas.
You remember that that house
Over Mexico.
that house show concert with Andy Gullahorn that our friends did for Awaken a few years ago?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It was
That made me cry.
probably 5 years ago.
Yes.
And there were 55 people, I think,
Something like
in
that.
this house. And as Andy was singing, I was standing in the back, and I had a little notepad, and I wrote down the names of everybody who was there. And it struck me that of all of the people who were here, I'm like, I only knew 3 of them 5 years ago.
Isn't that something?
And most everyone who is a part of my life today, I've met since I've been in recovery. And now, gratefully, that is not exactly the same ratio as it was maybe a few years ago, because I think God's been really good to bring some people from earlier parts of our lives around again and be able to reconnect. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing like the connections that are made with new relationships out of weakness and brokenness. It's like we got nothing to prove. We're not showing up in our all-star uniform. And so, like, if they're going to accept us here, then this is probably a relational keeper.
Yeah, I said this in group not long ago, the spouses group. So all these women that come in have either had a husband or a boyfriend or somebody they're engaged to, or they're divorced from, hurt them with, betrayal trauma or sexual. You fix that.
With sexual betrayal?
With sexual betrayal. But I said, we don't have to explain. We can say how we're feeling about something, and like everybody gets it. Everybody's head's nodding yes. We don't have to explain it. And I said, yeah, who's walking in here with a mask? Because you walk in the door and everybody knows why you're there. So there's nothing to hide. You don't necessarily pour out your story that first night, but like there's no mask in that room. And so I think that's part of why we go deep. I mean, you can go in a room and not say anything, and you're not going to get to know people.
100%. Yes. I'm not disputing you. And also, and also, like Bobby, we've been in a lot of rooms where there are still some masks being worn, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, that's true.
people are dipping their toe and not really sure whether or not they want to do what's required to enter into that vulnerability.
Well, let me
It's a
clarify.
process. Yeah.
Let me clarify. You may have your mask on, but walking in the door, there's an element that
Yeah.
even walking in the door is acknowledging.
Yeah. I learned how to be real and authentic in a recovery meeting.
Yeah.
Like as I'm hearing other guys share, and I began to try to practice that, practice that honesty, practice being able to sit for a second and really think about how I was really doing, and to be able to share that. It was a learned process, and so that mask was kind of slowly getting peeled off, even coming to recovery meetings.
Yeah.
And for people that don't go to recovery meetings because your struggles, your brokenness, the way that they've manifested has not been in addiction necessarily, and so you haven't found yourself in those rooms, don't hear us saying that that's the only place it can happen. But for us, let me just speak for myself. For me, like you said, Bobby, that was the learning ground. That was the classroom, where I learned, so those are the things we talk about in here. Okay. I'll dip my toe in that pool. And then in doing that, it didn't just stay in those rooms.
Right.
And let me clarify, the things that were specifically said in those rooms did stay in the room. But the skills that I learned and being able to identify, to know and to name what I was experiencing and how that had affected me, and just talk in ways that were more authentic, went outside of those rooms and have really shown up in just all of our relationships. I mean, hun, it's changed the way that we've parented our kids. It's changed the way we talk about, just life with people. Not everybody is ready to show up for the intensity that feels like and the realness. And of course, we don't get that deep, that real with every conversation we have, but it has taught me how to show up in ways that I want to, just in regular run-of-the-mill people I meet, in, I don't know, at church, other contexts of, just being out and socially. And it's a good thing. And I don't think that I was about to say, I don't think I could have learned anywhere else. Sure, I could have. But the story was God wanted me to learn it in those recovery rooms.
Yeah. And because, what we're talking about is authentic community. And recovery meetings are one example of authentic community. There's lots of other places it can happen.
One place that I'll just share that it happened with me just this past weekend at the time we're recording this was at my church men's retreat. It was the first one that we've done. We're a fairly small church, less than 300 members. So, about 120 to 140 men who are in the congregation as members. And we had over 50 men come to this retreat. So, almost half the men in our church were there. And I was asked to give one of the talks. And it wasn't about sex addiction. It wasn't about recovery, but it was about what's underneath all of the things that we talk about related to sex addiction and recovery, which is not knowing who I am or struggling with my identity and how that affects how I relate to my behavior and how I think about myself. And just to talk about identity, struggles, progress with a group of guys from my church and to see them just soaking it in eagerly, enthusiastically, like this is a message that they wanted to hear. Like that's huge. And I learned that in recovery. And yet I'm experiencing it in my church. And that's the prayer, really, that what we do through Awaken, what we do through this podcast, or what God does using us through these things is going to not just stay in these, pigeonholed contexts of recovery, but that it's going to go everywhere. How many people have said, I wish my church was more like my recovery meeting? Well, it can be. It absolutely can be. And you are probably one of the ways that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because somebody has to go first.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I love Awaken's vision statement is that, we're here to help people live the lives that they were created to live. And, I kind of see a recovery meeting like almost like a specialist, like medically, it'd be like a hospital for a very specific thing. Whether it's sex addiction or alcohol or whatever, it's like you go there to find healing for something very specific because the church can't, I say can't, but most churches, individual local churches don't have the means to specialize in those type of things. And so you go to a recovery meeting, you find healing, and that allows you to go back to your church and engage or your community. I mean, if you're not a Christian, like whatever community you have and live that life that you were created to live, to be able to engage in people and have that authentic community outside of a meeting.
Well, this has been great, just reflecting on this year, the first year, hopefully of many. There are a lot of great conversations coming, so please keep listening. And I'll take a second, shift into shameless plug mode for a minute. We are so grateful for everyone who has listened and who faithfully listens to the podcast. And also, we'd love for more people to find out about us. And I will tell you, I don't know everything about how all the algorithms work and how people find podcasts, but I know that the more people who follow a show, who download episodes, who give 5-star ratings and write positive reviews, the more of those we have, the more notice the show will get, and the more people will find out about it. It'll start showing up on their recommended roles and feeds. And so please, if the show has been helpful for you, if you've benefited by listening to it, please just help us out. Write a review, give us 5 stars, post about it on social media. If you don't want to be known as like connected to the sex addiction people, just say, hey, I discovered this podcast. I love what they're talking about. You don't even have to say that you know us.
Friends of friends of friends
Right.
are doing this podcast.
Right, exactly. It's good for the world. And so, yeah, but do what you can to help us. We would really, really love that. Stace, Bob, anything else y'all want to say as we're wrapping up? Did I just call you Bob? I said Stace, and then I shortened Bob. I don't call you Bob.
Stace and Bob. I just love how relaxed I feel right now because Stacey, you brought up. I don't think we were recording at the time, but how nervous you were the very first time we did it.
So nervous.
You asked me, and I was like, "Yeah, I was so nervous during that first episode."
And
We should go back and listen to that first 2 episodes.
I was getting over a cold, and I remember I hate how my voice sounds. I've kind of gotten used to it. I'm like, it is what it is. But when that first one came out, I didn't hear you editing it, I don't think, and I was like, oh, I kind of like my cold voice, my getting over my cold voice.
It's like a sexy, raspy voice.
Yeah. So it gave me confidence. Like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. I want to close out just by reading something from the episode with John Lynch. When I asked John what he really wanted out of our conversation, he said, I would love this to be some of the result of what comes out of our time. And we hope this has been what's come out of all the time that we've spent. Jesus said in John 15:9, just as the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. Just don't run. Speaking to each one of us, Jesus is saying, listen, to the exact extent that my Father loves me, so also I love you. Could we dare to believe that no matter what we did wrong yesterday or last week, that there is no one in the entire world that God actively and uniquely loves more than me? He is not ashamed, disgusted, or angry ever. And because you're a new creature with Christ's heart pulsing through you, he's not afraid of what you're going to do with such love and grace. May that be true. And let's live in freedom and connection. We just pray that this show will be a part of how you experience that more. So thanks for listening, everybody.